Hello everyone, welcome to Scorcher Toys at Anymoon.com's look back at the Toynami Masterpiece Collection Alpha toys. Today's video will focus on the 3 standard Alpha releases. That's Scott's Blue Alpha, released in October 2004, Rook's Red Alpha, which followed in November 2004, and then Lancer's Green Alpha, which hit shelves in January 2005. All these toys retailed for $79.99 and were available at numerous traditional retailers. But it's been about 15 years since these came out, so if you're looking for one now, you'll need to hit the secondary market. If you're looking for the latest and greatest Robotech products or just about any other toy, head on over to Big Bad Toy Store using the link below. Find what you're looking for and help this channel out in the process. These toys continued the book-style tradition that Toynami introduced with their Masterpiece VF1 toys. These boxes are super nice. The books come in a white shipper with a portrait on the side and the production number usually printed on a sticker on the top. The books have some nice updated art on the spine, there's gold foil print, a cover that opens to reveal the toy, simulated pages along the side, and the boxes are made of super sturdy cardboard. Sliding the tray out of the box, you'll find the Alpha and a tiny replica Cyclone figure in storage mode, the gun, a pilot figure, the shoulder-mounted sensor array. In a plastic baggie taped to the back of the tray, you'll also find instructions and stickers. Unfortunately, you often have to remove the baggie from the tray to get those items, and removing the tape can tear the cardboard tray. So, if you're just looking for instructions, check out my separate transformation guide and visit Anymoon.com for full scans of the instructions included with each release. Pulling the toy out of the tray, you're going to want to make sure everything is cobbled together correctly. These winglets should be pegged in securely in the front. The wings themselves are on sliders. They should be recessed all the way tight. And these pegs on the back, got the forearms into the legs, should be fully recessed as well. Those arms should be nice and tight. Now, that's not always the case, so double check that. If any of that is wrong, then your fighter mode won't sit properly, including these hips here that should be all the way up against the intake. There's a little extension here that doesn't always get recessed properly. The pegs that go out of the crotch should be into the back of the legs. All of that needs to happen for fighter mode to really function like it should. Once you're happy with that, you can reach a little fingernail in here and pull out your vertical stabilizer and then angle it off to the side, like so. And then if you want to put the pilot in the cockpit, you're going to want to put a little pressure down on the nose, and then that frees up the canopy to open, like so. If you don't put the pressure down, that canopy can be really tricky to open, and so you will find some of these for sale where this is all splintered from someone really trying to pull up on here and squeezing it and causing that damage. Now you can open the canopy all the way up like so. Take your pilot figure. There's a little button in the butt of the pilot figure. Pilot figures look like this, maybe with a little bit different paint depending on which version of the toy we're looking at, but the mold is always the same. There is a hole in the seat there, and you can kind of see that's what the cockpit looks like. We're going to take our pilot figure, we're going to put him in there, we're going to put that button in the hole, and we're going to press down, and then we're going to bring the canopy closed, and again a little pressure up in the front, push down there, and there you go. So now what we might want to do is pull our gun out from the tray. The gun originally looks like this. You can sweep that part back. Now if you wanted to put it on like this, it's not going to work. The magazine will get in the way. So option 1, there's this button on the bottom of the wing. There's that hole in the side of the gun, which is all nicely done. So we could put the gun on like so, and that's kind of the most true, perfect transformation way of handling the gun. Or we can pop the gun off and remove the magazine, because there's a lot of line art where that magazine just kind of mysteriously disappears for fighter mode. And then we can take our toy and we can put the gun on like it's supposed to be. And there you go. That obviously is a lot less obtrusive look for fighter mode. One issue you may have noticed with fighter mode is the gap on the forearm here. It's almost impossible to resolve. I've had these arms open before, not on this particular toy, but on other ones. And if you see the insides of how this thing is made, it's pretty obvious. You can struggle all you want, and you're never going to get them to sit flush. They manufacturing just wasn't good enough. CM's and Evolution Toy did a much better job there. Flipping the toy over, we can access the landing gear. There's a little tab on the side of the leg that you can put your fingernail on to expose the rear landing gear. And then we can get a fingernail in there and pull up, and that will bring the landing gear forward. Now, it does lock in a forward position, and again, this is one toy to toy. Some of them do that a lot better than others, and there's a little rubber spinning wheel. Now on the other side, I have had some issues here. So I'm going to open this door up, pull out my landing gear, but there's no wheel on it on this side, and that's because the wheel has cracked from being in there and having not enough clearance with the foot. So I can fix this, I got the pin, but just something that may happen to you. Another issue that happens with these toys is the front landing gear. That door here, if there isn't enough clearance between this side of the landing gear and the door itself, the door will not open properly. So I can open this part here, and I can open this part here, but if this part has too much resistance at this point, you're going to be in trouble. What's going to happen is it's going to bend that door. So that's another thing. You'll find a lot of these toys for sale where there's a stress mark here, or even that door has cracked off entirely, which is obviously no good. And then we can fish a fingernail in there, bring that landing gear forward. You can see there's a peg on the door. There is a slot in the landing gear. You can line those up and peg it into position like so. And then you'll be able to put your toy down on the landing gear. When the toy is sitting on those landing gear, there will be essentially no clearance with that chest hump underneath. You probably will be able to get it so you can fit like a piece of paper underneath it, but that's the best you're going to do. That said, it should be sitting on all of the tires. If it's not sitting on all of the tires, then you have something mistransformed somewhere. Now the Zeta version head is the most likely to kind of dangle down on you. It fits kind of awkwardly into position, but you should be able to get it to stay tucked up like so. Now the toy does have wing mounts on either side for that gun, so you can go ahead, grab the gun from another toy and get kind of a dual blazing weapons look. There's also hinges here that allow the wings to come down. You can pull these hinges out a little bit and then angle the wings down a little more if you like that look better. The Toynami MPC was really the first alpha toy that gave us all of the opening missile hatches. And so you have these guys here, which do a nice job. They flip open and then fold all the way back to lay flat on the forearm. So that's pretty cool. Now this can be a little finicky. Like on this side, it's very stiff. But if I apply a little pressure, it'll fold all the way open. Another thing that's a little weird, these vertical stabilizers on this toy, this one does not want to lean out. It seems to want to come in. So that's probably another build or manufacturing issue to keep an eye out for. The big weakness for the Masterpiece Alpha is the upward sloped nose. There's some artwork that shows an upward slope, particularly in Diver or Guardian mode, but Fighter mode is generally drawn with a much more neutral nose that looks better. The more recent Evolution toy offering does a much better job getting the nose correct, though that nose seems a bit long. Now the Gakken toy is still a favorite of mine. It's big and solid, but it's also a little clunky in Fighter mode, and the paint job leaves a lot to be desired. Toynami gave us our first Alpha with a proper paint job, and despite owing much of its design and details to the EMI kit from the 80s, it was a big improvement over its predecessor. It may be tempting to think of the MPC as a completed version of the old model kit, but it's definitely not that. The model kit had straightforward wings, like the Gakken, instead of the nice curve of the Toynami, and it was made of thin injection molded plastic, whereas the Toynami is made of zinc die-cast and ABS with beefier joints. So yes, this toy does owe a lot of its physical dimensions and design elements to the work EMI did, but don't think you can use EMI kits to help you fix your broken Toynami or vice versa. They're very different beasts. Evolution Toy did take the paint job a little further by adding the stripes on the wings and stabilizers, and their Alpha is more svelte, but to be honest, svelte is never a word I associated with the Alpha. I always thought it was more of a little bruiser. No toy has really captured the anime magic of the compact legs in fighter mode, but ET does a particularly poor job. So from above, I'd take the Toynami on account of its legs forming less of a tail. From the front, Alpha toys have struggled with drooping sternums and protruding kneecaps. The Toynami's poor job here is emphasized by the high nose cone placement, but regardless, that's a fat sternum hanging down that's not supposed to do that. Even the Evolution toy, with 30 plus years now of history to build off of, couldn't figure out how to keep that sternum raised without ruining soldier mode. If the Gakken could angle its stabilizers out, it may just be the best from this angle. The CM's toy, of course, is awful from every angle. Diver mode looks good on these toys, but it's going to be your first place that you run into a few big pitfalls. The first being the hands. The hands are made out of rubber type plastic, feels just like rubber, with metal pins through it. And as you move the hands, the pressure that gets created creates tears at the pins and eventually causes the hand to just fall apart. Sometimes it's rather rapid. You're holding the toy, you're putting the gun in the hand, and all of a sudden the whole hand falls apart. So that's why I've got my toy kind of very loosely gripping the gun on that side. Here is an example of a hand that has begun the breaking process. You can see that pin right there. There's a crack next to it. And you've seen this if you've watched my transformation guide also. Another crack on the other side. I'll show you another toy in Batloid mode that is just a completely glued together hand at this point because they do so poorly. The other thing that you're not seeing right now, this toy being basically brand new and still having its fair share of issues, is the shoulder joint. Now, out of the box, that shoulder joint was generally stiff enough to hold up the gun. But that's not a ratcheting joint, that's a friction joint. And after just a couple transformations and a couple poses in either diver or Batloid mode, that shoulder gets so weak that it can no longer hold up the gun. So enjoy this diver mode style pose while you can, because it's gonna be short-lived. Another build quality issue that will likely vex you with these toys is the extension of the arms. So on this toy, I've got both arms extended, but they are extended differently, and it's very strange. So on this side, you could see that line comes all the way across above the bicep. On this side, that line hasn't been completely exposed. So the shoulder has extended further down on this side than on this side. Going completely opposite with that, going down to the forearm, you could see that this side has a greater extension down at the forearm than I've been able to achieve on this side. So there should be a little bit more extension there that I'm not able to get. So this side, the shoulder should come down further. This side, the forearm should come down further, but I can't get it to work. It's really stuck in there. And to make matters worse, it's just a plastic rod inside the arm, not a metal rod. So you can't really yank on it, or else you're gonna just break the arm right off. So we've already discussed the shoulder top missile bay, but there's also these forearm missile bays. Now, unfortunately, on the forearms, the missile detail is a little too deep. So on either side, you don't really get that look of missiles. And the doors themselves are a little awkward in their implementation. Sometimes they open better than others. Moving down to the legs, we do have those bays right there, which all look pretty good. And then there's that bay on the interior of the leg as well. So you have the missile bays that are appropriate, you have the number of missiles that are appropriate, unlike what CM's and Evolution Toy have done, giving you an extra bay. That extra bay is actually supposed to be part of the whole landing gear mechanism. They've done something a little bit different with that, but it seems to be right in line with what you would hope from the liner. Okay, so you have some loose shoulders to deal with, you have breaking hands to deal with, you have arms that don't extend properly, but other than that, how does diver mode handle? Well, actually pretty well, all things considered. One trick that you need to be sure you do as part of transformation, and watch out my transformation guide, push in the thighs once you've gotten back into Guardian or Diver mode, and that pushes the hips up against the intakes and stops the toy from falling on its nose. Now my green version has a very sloppy extension, so that's a little less functional as it is on, say, my red toy. But overall handling pretty good. There's not a whole lot you can do. You can spread the legs apart, get some decent looking poses, but that's about it. And we're ready to move on. Looks are obviously subjective, but I am a big fan of what Toynami did in Batloid or Soldier mode. And again, they do owe a lot of that to Imai before them. I think it looks great. Yeah, it's a little bit brutish looking, but again, that's kind of what I think of when I think of the Alpha. It's not tall, it doesn't have really thin limbs, it's not insect-like like some modern mecha designs. It's kind of chunky, and I appreciate that. Not everybody will, and so if you're one of those people, that's just something to be aware of. Now, this not being an integrated piece confounded a lot of people. A lot of people tried to shove it back in the toy as they transformed it. Don't do that. You will break something for sure. And breaking is something that happens a lot with these toys. Like you'll notice I don't have a screw cover here, and that's because that leg has been completely disassembled at one point and put back together because one day the toe just fell off for no good reason. So if you're buying one of these things in the secondary market, you're going to spend a lot of money and you're going to get something that's very fragile at this point. It was fragile in the beginning, it's even more fragile now. To go through articulation for you, the head turns left and right. It's not a ball joint, but you can get around the fact that there's a flap open on that side, which is more than we could probably say about the Evolution toy, so good thing there. The arm spins all the way around, and I showed you again, this one really does not have any resistance at this point. Going down from the shoulder, you have the ability to pivot out and a twist point above the bicep and an elbow that does a little bit less than 90 degrees of articulation. Now let's see if this side is extended a little further. Maybe just barely less than 90 degrees of articulation. Hands spin around, and again, you really don't want to touch the hands if you can avoid it at all. But there you go. Now they do have a little wrist pivot to them, and that's kind of a bummer because if you try to get the forearm sloped out, then this just kind of goes up and down, and that's too bad. Now the nose cone does nestle inside this back plate. So if you're going to use the waist, which is on there, you kind of have to bring the nose cone back a little bit and then twist the toy. So there is a waist there, and that's cool. Just be aware when you do it that there is something nestled in the back and you're gonna have to move that around a little. Now you will push this chest thing in constantly on accident. Moving down to the legs, we have the hip that goes all the way back and forward. You can't really angle, there's my broken knee. You can't really angle out at the hips, which is a big bummer, but you can twist at the hip, and you're gonna use that probably to great effect as you try to pose this otherwise very stiff toy. There is the knee. It doesn't have much of a range of motion, so that can be a little confounding. And then moving down to the foot, you have like almost no range of motion. It can come back like this, can't really come toe up at all, and it obviously can't come in or out. And so at the end of the day, while there's a few points of articulation that are great to see, you can't really do too much with this toy. You're gonna get it into poses like this, which look good, but you're just gonna have a few somewhat dynamic poses to choose from. Now, a minor correction here about the feet. They do have heels that can rock. Now, this isn't always true, and if yours doesn't rock, it's probably glued tight and you shouldn't even try to rock it. And also the toe does the same thing. You can get a little bit of a pivot. And again, same warning, if it doesn't do this, there's probably a little glue in there and something's gonna break. The problem is, since the hips don't really come out more than like this, both of those features don't really have much value to them. I mentioned that this toy comes with a Cyclone in storage mode. So this is what that Cyclone looks like. It's just a tiny piece of plastic that has been painted to look like a collapsed ride armor. And what we can do is we can store it in the chest. So we can take our toy and we can just slide this panel down right here. And then we can take the right armor, we could throw it in there, and we can close it up. And that is a concealed compartment, and is a sealed compartment. So now we can leave that in there, transform the toy, handle it, and just leave that ride armor in at all times. It will stay there. It won't fall into the larger toy in general, so you'll be able to pull it back out whenever you want, but it will rattle around on you. It's not secured in any way. And I would probably recommend you just leave that in the box. Toynami left themselves the option to produce up to 15,000 toys of each variant, but they produced far fewer. It seems like 7,500 Scots were made and probably about 5,000 each of the other versions. They teamed up with Aoshima for another production run with some changes. Keep an eye out for a separate review of the Aoshima toys. At 17 centimeters tall in Batloid mode and 24 centimeters long in Fighter, these toys aren't large, but they are hefty at 400 grams. To put that in perspective, the recently produced Evolution Toy Legio stands 4.5 centimeters taller and weighs about 114 grams less. Visually, I really like this interpretation of the Alpha. It's thick and brutish, and while I can find things to nitpick in every mode, it's a much truer representation of the line art than the CMs, Gakken, or Evolution Toy have mustered. Although there's no forethought of a beta toy in the Alpha, the fact one was eventually made and paired better with this Alpha than CMs managed to pull off is pretty impressive to this day. If this toy was made even half decently, it might still be the Alpha toy I would recommend to this day, but it's not. Sadly, even if we ignored stuff falling apart, the build quality is rife with paint errors, glued fingerprints, and wavy plastic that causes really poor fit and issues with the toy functioning like it should. When you then consider that the hands will definitely break if you use them, and that the arms and feet frequently break off either due to manufacturing issues or stress caused from light handling, you end up with a decent looking display piece but a dreadful toy. This one is for die-hard Mospeada and Robotech New Gen fans only. Subscribe and visit anymoon.com for the full review, and as always, thanks for watching.